Now we're on Daf Nun Gimel Amud Beis. Tell Ravin Shkila tu Vasach. You didn't do me any favor by telling me this. We know this without you. V'shadya achizra, take your words and throw them to the wind. Throw them to the kotzim. Kotzim are the thorns. I don't need what you said. It doesn't help me. Why? Kfar tirgama Rav Hoshaya lishmate. Rav Ochia already interpreted this sugya here in Bavel that an arusa does not have a ksuba because we don't apply what it says in the ksuba lichsheti nasi when you get married. And now we go back to the Mishnah. None nukvan the yahavi lichi bina yeven yasmin bebesi. Any female children that you have from our marriage will be supported from my estate after my death until they get married. Rav had a girsa in the Mishnah aditi lachan leguvrin, exactly as we have it in our printed text, that she, the daughter, continues to be supported by her late father's estate until she gets married to a man. But Levi had a different girsa, aditi bagron, until she becomes a bogeres, which means until she's 12 and a half years old, she continues to collect mizonos from the estate of her father. After she reaches her 12 and a half simonim, and she's katshonim, and she's a bogeres, she no longer has rights to mizonos. So the Gemara asks, L'Rav, according to Rav, should I conclude that afagav de bogar, if she hasn't gotten remarried, even though she's already a bogeres, she continues to collect mizonos? Ula Levi, afagav de insiv, if she's still a nara, even if she gets married, she still could collect her mizonos, which makes no sense because she's married to another man. He's obligated to support her. Ella, says the Gemara, bagar v'lo insiv. In the following cases, everybody agrees. If she became a bogeres, even if she didn't get married. Insiv, if she got married, even though she's still a nara v'lo bagar, kuliyam v'lo pligi, both Rav and Levi agree that she will not be supported by the estate of her father. She already left the reshus of her father either because she got married to another man or because she became a bogeres, right? It's only been around Beisavi, only on Nara. Kipli, what is the machlokas between Levi and Rav? The arusa v'lo bagar. We're talking about a case of Erison and she's still a Nara. Rav says that when it says in the Ksuba, aditi lachun leguvrayin, is until you get married, and with Erison she's married, and even if she's still a Nara, she no longer has rights to mizonos. The Levi Amar and Levi holds, no, she continues to have rights to mizonos aditi bagrin until she becomes a bogeres or a nesua. But if she's an arusa and she's still a nara, then she collects mizonos. The Chaim Tani Levi Masnise. Levi was one of those early Amoron that brought down the Brisos, and in his Bris it says, in the Nusach of the Ksuba Atati Bagron, the Yimti Zibnehem Linsiva. Till they become a Bogeres, she continues until that point. They eat and be supported by mizonos. And if she's only an arusa, then she doesn't get mizonos. Once she's a bogeres, and it's time for her to get married, so to speak, right? So then, even though she's only an arusa, if she's a bogeres, she loses her rights to mizonos. If, on the other hand, she's still an arusa and not a nesua, then she continues to eat mizonos. So Gemara asks Tarti, are you telling me that according to Levi, you need both of them? You have to check off both boxes. Number one, she could only collect mizonos until she's a bogeres. And number two, she could only collect mizonos until she gets married. Let me just read to you. He says, "V'chi l'levi tzarchu shneim biyachad habas nizonos ad shetei bogeres v'gam she'agia zman linos v'negia zman linos imeinu bogeres o sheboger v'lo agia zman linos yesh lo mizonos." So in other words, she only forfeits mizonos according to Levi if she has two strikes against her. Either she is a nesua, or something called higias manalinose, or she's a bogeres. Ella, says the Gemara, that's not what Levi has in mind in his brisa. Oh, you have to add the word "o" to the brisa. O tibadrun, o yimte zimnun lisnavun. It doesn't mean you have to check off both boxes for her to forfeit on mizonos. If you check off one of the two boxes, that's enough for her to forfeit on mizonos. And the Gemara says that this issue between Rav and Levi is kitanois and machlokes tanoim. In the brisa ad Mosai Abbas, again we're talking about Abbas who's a Nara, nizones ad sheteares, according to the Tanakama, this brisa, until Erison. And with Erison, she forfeits her rights to mizonos, and that reflects the shita of Rav. Mishum Rav Elazar, the second Tana in this brisa, says Amru ad sheti bogim. So this ad sheti bogim of Rav Elazar reflects the shita of Levi, that she continues to eat mizonos even after Erison until she becomes a bogeres. Tony Rav Yosef ad yehevyon leguvrayon. When it says in the brisa that she, the daughter, continues to have to eat mizonos until she gets married, iboilu, I have a suffix. What does that word diahavyon mean? Havyon to Erison or havyon to Nesuin? And this was the issue that divided Rav and Levi. The Gemara concludes Teku. Rav Yosef did not come to any final conclusion. Amalei Rav Chisda Rav Yosef, Mishmiya lecha minei de Rav Yehuda. Did you perhaps hear something from Rav Yehuda with regard to an arusa? Again, arusa was a nara, and after her father died, can she eat from the father's estate and get mizonos? Yesh lo mizonos? I'm sorry, when I say the father's estate, the father's dead, but it means that her brothers inherited the father, but she has rights to take from the inheritance of her brother. Oh, shein lo mizonos, why she's already in arusa. Amalei Rav Yossi says to Rav Chisda, mishmashma lo shmila, I didn't hear anything. Ela misvara, but if you ask me for my logical, intuitive response, lesla, she will not be able to collect mizonos because Rabbanan only established the takana that Abbas will continue to be supported after her father's death from his estate. And why is that so? Because the father doesn't want her to be embarrassed that she has to knock on doors in order to support herself. And that's embarrassing for a woman to have to knock on doors and panhandle. But here, came into Ersa, once there was Erison, we can rely on the Arus, Shlo Nichale to Titazil. Titazil means Tisbayish. He would not want his future wife to be embarrassed, and therefore he's going to shell out and support her from his own pocket. If you didn't hear an answer to that effect from Rav Yehuda, and you're only giving me your intuitive feeling, then misvara isle, I would have come to the exact opposite conclusion, that based on logic, for sure she would be able to collect mizonos from her father's estate. Why? The future husband is not going to put his money in a precarious situation. He doesn't know whether this marriage is going to go through or not because he hasn't checked her out for mumim, for blemishes. Maybe he'll come to the conclusion he doesn't want to marry this woman. So he's not going to pay and shell out for her support during the period of eris. He could the Amri have another transmission, which is just the opposite. Amalei, Rav Yossi said to Rav Chisda, Mishma lo shmile. I didn't hear anything from Rav Yehuda, but Mismara Isle. I would have said logically she should certainly collect on his own. Why? Even though Kimle, the Oris doesn't know whether or not the marriage is going to be a solid marriage that'll go through. Lo shadi zuzi b'chti. He's not going to pay for mizonos and lose his money. If you didn't hear anything, you don't have a tradition of Yehuda, and say nothing. Because Visvara, if you ask me for logic, intuition, Lesla, she should not be able to collect mizonos. Kaven the Ersa, once she had Erisim, lo nichale de titazil. Her Orus would not allow her to have to bang on doors in order to get money, scrounge together enough food for a meal. And now we're about to present 5 different spekos. And for a pneumonic device, we have a Simon de Gavri. Gavri means we're going to tell you the names of the Amoraim, each one who had a suffix respectively. And that's the way we're going to remember their suffix, by remembering their names. Shak, Zoraf, Mana, V'yavama, Shnia, Rusa, Nusa. All right, we'll see what these 5 mnemonic memory devices refer to. Boy, Mine, here's the first question from Rav Sheshes. Just 1 second. What does he want over here? Okay, Rav Sheshes is Shak, is the first of the 6. We'll see why soon. Right, a girl who's below the age of 12 was married off by her brothers or her mother after her father died, which is Kedushin Ishus D'Rabbanan, and she could be Mima'enes. She could say to her husband, I'm out of here. I don't want to, she doesn't need to get. And now the question is, she's a young girl. Can she collect mizonos? Just 1 second, mizonos, I think, from her father's estate. He doesn't spell it out, but it's obviously from her father's estate. And now the question is, she's already been married, so she left the rishus of her father. What was Rav Sheshes thinking? That she could continue to demand zonos from the estate of her father if with marriage she left it. But the answer is, if you remember from our learning in Yevamis, and Miyun is Oker the Kedushin L'Mafreya. It retroactively undermines and invalidates the original marriage. So she never really left the rishus of her father. Or should we say no? At some point in time, she was married, and therefore in Lamazona she leaves the rishus of her father. By the way, this probably touches on the issue that we mentioned many times about Mikan Ulahavo L'Mafreya. All right, Amalei Rav Sheshes. To Nisua, I think I have an answer to my own question from a Bryce. Almana bebeis avia, or Grusha bebeis avia, which means that her husband died after Erisin, she's still in the rishus of her father, or her husband gave her get, and she's still in Arusa, and she's bebeis avia. Third case, Shomeres Yavam, right? So she's a widow. Her husband died without children, and she's waiting for the Yavam, who's the brother of her late husband, to be miyabim her, and she's bebeis avia. In the meantime, she's still in her father's house. Right? So after the death of her husband, she went back to her father's house. Yeshla mizonos. She has not yet been married, because again, we're talking about a case of an almana or a grucha ben erisin, and therefore she continues to be in the rishus of her father. She did not have nisuin, she did not leave the rishus of her father, and therefore, even though she was nisarsa, nevertheless she goes back to the rishus of her father after gerushin or after being widowed, and she collects mizonos. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Odo Bebeis Baila, Yesh Lo Mizonos. Eino Bebeis Baila, Ein Lo Mizonos. If she's still in her father's rishus, then she gets mizonos. If not, she was after Nesuin, then she left her rishus of her father. She doesn't get mizonos. I mean, basically, Rabbi Yehuda is reiterating exactly word for word what the Tanna Kama said. In fact, the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda, Hainu Tanna Kama. What's the difference between the two? Elolav, shouldn't we therefore interpret as Mima Enes, the Tanna Kama Rabbi Yehuda revolves around a Tana who's already been married. And then she was Mima Enes, and she went back to her father's rishus. Tanna Kama Savar Isla. Since the Miyun is Oker, the marriage, Lamafreya, she was never married, and therefore she goes back to her. She was always in her father's rishus. We didn't know that, and therefore she collects mizonos. Rabbi Yehuda Savar Lesla. Rabbi Yehuda holds she doesn't get mizonos. She's not considered ba'oda v'beis havia because she left the house of her father. Boy, Reish Lakish. Now we're up to the second of the 5 questions, and it's called Zaraf, which is another name for Reish Lakish. Bas Yevama. Okay, I got stuck on this Gemara. Let's see if we can work it out. We still have 2 minutes. Okay. So a man marries his Yevama, and they have a daughter. And now the Yavam died. Bad enough that his other brother died, now he dies, leaving a daughter. Yesh lo mizonos or ein lo mizonos. Right, there are 2 possible sources for mizonos: either the first brother, her first husband, or the Yavam, the second husband. And the Gemara now analyzes the suffix. Kevan diyomar mar. Since we had a statement in the Gemara in Yevamos, to basa al nichse baila harisha, that if she collects her ksuba, she collects it from the estate of her first original husband, not from the second husband. There's no t'nai ksuba for the second husband, the Yavam. Only for the first husband that died. So therefore, we should say less la mizonos. She doesn't get mizonos from the estate of the second husband, just like he doesn't have to pay the ksuba. Oh, Dilma, should we say no? Kevan de less la mirishon. Let's say the first husband left her nothing. He was penniless. Then what happens is she won't be able to collect the ksuba from the first husband. Does she get no ksuba at all? I mean, now she's married to the Yavam. Is Tekinu le Rabbanan Misheni. The Rabbanan made a takana that she could be able to collect the ksuba from the Yavam, from the second husband. Why? Because the whole entity of ksuba shalote kala denov lotzia, it shouldn't make it easy for him to just get angry and throw her a get, and that's going to apply now to the Yavam. And if that be the case, Isla, then she should be able to collect mizonos from Nichsei Yavam. In this scenario where the original husband, the first husband that died, left her no possessions. Teku, and the Gemara leaves it as an unanswered question. So this leads us to Boy Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Lazar Bas Shnia, which Beli Neder, if all is well, we'll pick up tomorrow. Okay then? So let me wish you a great day. And the Mirza Hashem, I'm going to teach now at 9:35 in about 3 minutes, yesterday's daf, the Shabbos daf, because we missed. Okay then.
Thank you.